Okay, we are recording. Lindsay, how are you today?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad
Good.
at all. Um, so you're back. Bewitched are back. We will get
Yeah,
right involved in everything about that as this
yeah.
podcast unfolds. But essentially today, I want to sort of do a bit more of a deep dive into you and your creative journey
hmm
and the songs that have been important along the way.
Yeah.
I always start by asking guests to tell me the song that they regard as having the greatest ever intro. What have you gone
Mm,
for?
yeah. Well, the first one that comes to mind for me is Meatloaf, Anything for Love.
Okay.
You know, that glorious piano intro at the beginning. Um, yeah, I think that song was came out when I was kind of in my teens, so it kind of made an impact on me because I think it was the first time come across a song that had a completely, sort of long intro.
Yeah.
Um, that seemed like an almost separate entity to the song
Yeah. Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
So it really kind of made an impact on me, and I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." And
Yeah.
it is gorgeous, isn't it? Just that the piano
It's super
sound.
grand, isn't it? Like anything that
Yeah.
that Meatloaf done, and bizarrely, I was talking last night about Bonnie Tyler's "Total Eclipse of the Heart,"
Oh yeah.
which obviously was written by Steinman, who wrote the Meatloaf classics as well, and it's all very cinematic
Yeah.
and
Dramatic.
grand and
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
Mm.
One of the
Beautiful.
things
Yeah.
I'm interested in is when I talk to musicians and songwriters and pop stars and such about time and how now, if we look at Bewitched as an example, when you set out back in the day, the way that people would get their music would have been far different from how people get their music now. So we're going back before
Massively.
Spotify, before the kind of impact of things like TikTok for
Yeah.
musicians now are utilizing these kind of movements in tech and
Mm-hmm.
how the sort of attention span of the younger generation seems to be slightly smaller
Yeah.
and very fast moving thumbs and
Yeah.
so there's pop writers are now probably more so than ever are trying to hook
Mm.
people instantly and
Yes.
pull them in. Tell me
Yeah.
about some of the changes that you've seen since recording back then to
Mm.
recording now.
I think this is one of the interesting things about where we find ourselves at the moment is that the first time we were around compared to now,
Yeah,
how much the music industry has changed
yeah,
because of the technological revolution. And it's just it's so different. I mean, when
yeah,
we were around the first time, this is going back to 1998, you know, you would, first of all, you would tour to
yeah,
promote your music, your physical music, so your CDs or your cassettes at the time. And that was the way in which you would sell records, which is actually how you had made money and how you made a
yeah,
living from the industry. Now you release music for next to nothing. It doesn't cost very much to buy a song these days and stream it. And you release it in order to promote your tours. And
yeah,
that's where you make the financial,
yeah,
that's where you make your living. So it's completely flipped. That's one of the differences. But also the way in which you promote yourself as an artist has changed so dramatically. You know, back in the day, it was quite a slow burner in some ways, really, because a record company would take you on and develop you as an act, you know, an artist or a band, and spend a little bit of a budget and a bit of time A&Ring you and getting you to a point where they felt you were ready to release and everything else. And in that time, that's where you grew as an artist and developed your skill and honed in on what your sound is and all the rest of it, but also where you did all of your groundwork
yeah,
and, you know, in sort of generating a fan base and an interest in your music. So that's what we used to do. That's where we come from that era. And I remember we had our development deal with Sony, And within that time, we were in the studio writing songs. They saw something in us and they wanted to sign us, but we weren't quite there yet. You know, we didn't have the hit songs under our belt. So we used to gig our music, and we used to go up and down the country doing countless school assemblies, under 18s nightclubs, radio interviews, up and down, up and down. We went for months on end. Did all that groundwork, and that was before we even the full contract was even picked up by Sony. And as soon as we had C'est La Vie recorded, that's when things kind of started to escalate a little bit. And Sony said, right, we think you've got your first single. This is exciting now. We're going to pick up the deal. And then it turned into, from a development deal, it turned into like a 6-album deal or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it was a big deal at the time. It was like, oh my gosh, you know, we've got a proper deal now. You know, and even then, you know, the hard work was still to come. It was all the TV shows that we used to do, you know, your CD UK, your SMTV, your Top of the Pops. It was all the photo shoots and interviews you used to do for all the teeny mags. Again, Top of the Pops, Smash Hits, all of those that aren't around really anymore. You know, top of the Pops we used to do.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because for you know, anybody that's grown up in the United Kingdom, the importance as you know, as a youngster of Top of the Pops, that was where you saw, because we didn't have the internet, so we wouldn't be able to go on YouTube and watch all of this stuff. We didn't have social media, so we didn't know what Madonna was having for her dinner. So you know, the only time you would get it would be Top of the Pops, and that Thursday night or the Friday night, you would tune in and you would watch half an hour where you would see your pop stars. Like,
absolutely.
To grow up watching that, tell me about the first time you done Top of the Pops. Like, was that a moment?
It was a huge moment. Yeah, it really was. I mean, so obviously when we recorded it, we knew that we were going to be number one at the time because we had our midweek. Or possibly it was recorded I can't remember now the timings of it, but anyway, so they record your performance, and I remember that first time we were there at the Top of the Pop studios, we bumped into Bee Gees and Celine Dion. And it was just like, oh my God, what is happening right now? Like, I'm sorry, but are we just hanging out with the Bee Gees and Celine Dion backstage while we're just about to go and perform on Top of the Pops? This is surreal. So surreal right now. But I'll tell you what was even more surreal is that when that show was aired, which was a couple of days later, it could have been even the day later, we were sat at home where we lived together in Egham in Surrey in a little house, waiting to watch Top of the Pops. We were watching Top of the Pops, and we knew that we were going to be at the end of the show because we were number one. And it was just like, when it came to number two, we were going, oh my God, my hearts were going and everything. It's like, well, we know we're going to be up next. We know what's going to happen. But it was so surreal. And it was such a big deal. Such a big deal. This is the show that we had grown up watching ourselves, and all our favorite artists used to be on it. And it was a really big deal. It was really exciting. And I do, in some ways, I feel a bit sad because that's not there for this younger generation now. They don't have that sense of anticipation and excitement to see their bands, because everything is just so accessible, isn't it, with social media? Totally. So in that respect, it's changed so much. And everything is, like you said, everything is such a faster pace. You know, singles are just dropped every other week, it seems. You know, content is daily. But I suppose that's just the way things have changed, because these artists, well, us artists, we don't have the TV shows to do. We don't have the magazines to do the photo shoots for and everything else. And everything is just instant. Everything is at your fingertips. Here's your social media. Here's your account. You put out what you want when you want, you know. So it's just very, very different.
Lindsay, I'm going to take you back. Tell me the first song that you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Yes. So I think I just seem to remember when Mariah Carey released Vision of Love. This was her first single. And it was a combination of her vocal and the song itself. And it made such a huge impact on me I feel like it was the song that made me want to get into the music industry. It was the song that made me think, oh, I'd love to be a part of the music industry, whether it's as a writer, a producer, a singer in a band, something. I was just so in love with the whole idea of it.
Yeah.
And it really captured me, and it really kind of inspired something in me. And then I went on to buy her album, and I absolutely loved her album. And I think I was a fan of hers for the first couple of albums, and I think she kind of changed her direction
Yeah.
then after that.
Yeah.
But in those early days where it was just all about her vocal, it was
Yeah.
just incredible. But yeah, I would say that was one that made a huge impact on me.
If you had to pinpoint the actual emotion that you got hearing that, what would it have been?
That's a really interesting question. The actual emotion would have probably been a sense of maybe love, just love for what I was hearing, just absolute, just that pure feeling of, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm loving this, I think that was it.
And so where was you at this point? Where was growing up?
So I was in Greece at the time.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Greece till I was 13. And then I moved to Ireland at the age of 13 and lived there till I was about 18, 19, which is when I got into the band, and then we moved to the UK.
Tell me a little bit about that moment where you're 13 and you moved to Ireland from Greece, because that's a very, very tough age to be for, for any young woman to be 13. It's a time of trying to find out who you are, fit in with the right people, find your tribe, and to then kind of up sticks from one country to another. How was that?
It was incredibly hard. I think it was kind of like being ripped away from everything you've ever known. And as you say, at that age, your kind of your tribe, your friends are so important to you. And in some ways it felt like the end of the world for me, because I just thought, what is going to happen? Like, what am I going to do? And also, not only was I leaving my friends, but I was leaving my dad. So my parents were splitting up at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was huge. It was pretty big. I think in hindsight, it was probably one of the biggest character building times of my life. I adapted very, very quickly. I made new friends. I embraced a different culture, even though I was familiar with it because my mum obviously was Irish, and we used to visit Ireland every single year. So I did actually have friends over there, and I knew Ireland, but it's different to actually then live there. And very quickly I grew to absolutely adore it. And I love, Ireland is just probably one of the most welcoming and hospitable countries ever. Yeah. So it didn't take long for me to settle in. But yeah, you're right. As a 13-year-old, it was a huge change. And quite a sad time really for me.
Sure.
But luckily, as I say, I do look back and think, but would I be the person I am now, had I not experienced that and other difficulties later on? Probably not. And I think now, being a parent as well, I think we try and protect our children so much, don't we, from difficult situations in life, and just anything that can present challenges. And I think maybe sometimes we try too hard to protect them, and actually they have to go through certain things to become adults and become adults that can deal with change and that can adapt to different situations. So you could look back and go and wallow a little bit and say, well, poor me, and that was really hard. And yeah, it was. But I also like to take the positive from it and think, well, actually it kind of made me who I am as well.
Sure.
So yeah.
Let's stay in the formative years for track 3. And I'm going to ask you, please, to tell me the song that reminds you of your time at school, please.
I think, I think the first song that springs to mind, there's probably a few, but the first song.
You can have some honourable mentions. You can throw some in.
Well, because it sort of depends at what stage, because I think
Sure.
my taste varied.
Yeah.
But I think when I was in my teenage years living in Ireland, I became really interested in rock, kind of
Yeah.
that side of things, and Nirvana was huge at the time. So Smells Like Teen Spirit is a huge one for me, where I just remember that kind of encapsulating my whole teenage years.
Yeah. That's one of the greatest intros ever as well.
I know, right? Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I was really into the Stone Temple Pilots and Skid Row and Guns N' Roses, that kind of era. Yeah. So
I mean, that was a golden time for
yeah.
guitar music. I think the
Oh
early
yeah.
90s, when Nirvana dropped, it just, you'd say Stone Temple Pilots and
Yeah.
Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam, they just kept coming, didn't they?
Yeah.
And it was just
Yes.
a glorious time for
It really was.
guitar
Yeah.
music. And they were becoming, like, I mean, Kurt Cobain was the biggest pop star of that time. I mean,
I know.
as much as he was just this underground guitar band, that all
Yeah.
of a sudden, obviously, I don't think he was cut from the right cloth to be able to deal with that
Yeah.
kind of exposure, and obviously it's very
No,
tragic
bless him.
what happened to him.
Yeah, really tragic. Yeah.
But it felt at them points, in those early 90s, that guitar bands were the biggest pop stars. It was all
Yeah.
about rock, and even
Yeah.
going forward a few years to that, when you get to the mid 90s with Blur, Oasis, Pulp, and
Yeah.
Suede, they become the biggest pop stars of their day as well.
Yeah,
There was a
definitely.
lot of emphasis on guitars in the 90s.
Yeah, you're right. There really was.
I want to talking of sort of school, and when I, when people think of you and the band, we're picturing what we saw as four very confident, women on stage, and doing their thing, having record breaking success, with number one records. From moving to changing, schools and countries at 13, and to then find yourself, and as your career's sort of, unfolded over, from those formative days of Bewitched right up until now. Tell me about your relationship with confidence.
I was very shy as a kid. Um, I was never kind of like the center of attention, in terms of I was never the loud kid, or, I was never the obvious candidate for someone who would go on to be on stage necessarily. There were definitely other kids in my class or in my friendship group who were more kind of, you would imagine them doing something like that. But I always had this real passion for music. And I think initially maybe it kind of manifested as me just kind of playing. I played the piano since I was 6. And then the guitar, I picked the guitar up at about 13. And that's when I started writing songs as well. I think my confidence grew actually in my teenage years. And then I think then when I got into the band, interestingly, I feel like my confidence dipped a little bit in the band. When I look back now at some of the interviews and stuff like that, I do think, oh, you were so shy in the band, like, and just like speaking up and stuff like that. I'm not really sure why, but I think since then, I'm a confident person now, and I think life experience does that to you as well, but I went and did a 2-year acting course about 13 years ago now, 14 maybe. And it was very intense. It was an intense acting course, full time. And in that course, it was almost like a 2-year therapy in a way, because it was everything to do with acting is about the study of human condition. So in order to study human condition, you have to study yourself and how you operate and what makes you tick and what makes you react and what are your trigger points and this, that, and the other. And it almost really breaks you down and then builds you back up again. So I
How
learned a
was
lot
that as an
about myself.
experience for you? How was that?
A really life-changing and very interesting and actually very important, because I think it got me in touch with a lot of who I am, and gave me the courage and the confidence to express who I am and to be proud and honor who I am. I think before that I had perhaps kind of squashed myself a little bit in order to accommodate others, or maybe because I didn't validate my own sense of self or my own feelings, so I didn't necessarily speak up about them as much. But I think that changed, and now, even though sometimes it's slightly outside my comfort zone, I still do it, and I'll still speak up, and I'll still say what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling, because I think actually it's really, really important, and it goes a long way towards protecting your mental health to be able to do that. It's a very slippery slope to just deny your feelings and deny who you are and what you think, So yeah, I think I've been through a journey, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm here. I'm here.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell me about the first record you remember buying, Lindsay.
What record did I first buy? Okay, so this is a funny one. It was in Greece, obviously, because I was growing up in Greece. So I remember there was this song that came out one year, and it was a Greek artist. Her name was Paulina, and she had this song called Bama Yatreles, which is, if you translate it, it's let's go have a crazy time, let's go have a fun time.
Right.
And the song goes, Bama Yatreles stis Seychelles, which means let's go have fun in the Seychelles.
Right.
Random and very specific, but it was a hit. It was a smash. It was huge in Greece. It was like the summer song, and it's so much fun. And even now I remember it like, Bame Yatreles, stis Seychelles, Bame Yatreles, oh. And she was just like, I had her poster on my wall. I had her vinyl record. I had her cassette. It was the first time I'd kind of really felt like a bit of a fangirl. And I must have only been about, I don't know, 7 or 8.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's like, this is the question where, sometimes people's first records, people can be a little bit embarrassed about them and things like that. They weren't the coolest of bands and things like that. But what's lovely is I've done 480 of these podcasts now, and whoever I've had on have always sort of chosen, records there when they always go, oh yeah, this one's not so cool. But when they talk about it, they light up like you lit up then. And like, because music, there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure as far as I'm concerned. If you hear something and it gives you joy, or it gives you melancholy, or whatever experience you want to get from it, there's nothing to feel guilty about. And you just started singing that song that you bought when you was however old you was, and it just made you sing it, and it made you smile, and it lit you up. And like,
well,
that's
I felt
the joy
like an
of music,
8-year-old.
Right? Love it. Right. Okay, so I want to move on now, and we're going to go clubbing. So tell me about the song that soundtrack your clubbing, and tell me about what it was like, because how old was you when C'est La Vie come out?
So I must have been maybe 1920.
So they're your prime clubbing years, pretty much, aren't they? And
well, it's interesting because I don't think I ever really clubbed till I was out of the band. So like talking about 23, 24, 25.
Right.
So I basically went from being in school straight into the band. I'm sure I did a bit of partying around that time, as you do, but I don't remember doing a lot of it because I feel like I went straight from school into working, and I didn't have the uni experience, even though I was due to go to Trinity in Dublin to do a business degree. But I took a year out, and in that year out, that's when I joined the band and got signed. So it was kind of like straight into work, really. And with that, it was, we just didn't have time to go clubbing. It was like, we've got to be up at 6, so I'm not going clubbing. I need to look well. I need to look fresh. I need to be able to sing and dance, and it just wasn't worth it. So, and even during the band, we were so kind of focused on our work that we didn't really do any partying. I don't really remember ever kind of going out a lot in the band at all. But I do remember when the band ended and I had a bit of time.
Just to go back to that before we move on to that, because that's crazy, because I think for so many people, you said about, and then we got the record deal a little bit earlier on in the podcast. And I think people just generally think like once you've signed that record deal, you're all multimillionaires instantly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you do Top of the Pops, and then you just, you know, you piss balling around on like yachts and things like
Yeah.
that. And it's the
That
hard,
is the perception. Yeah.
but the reality of it is the hard work pretty much starts there, right? Because
Yes.
for
Yes.
most people, essentially, like when you watch, you know, these X Factors and things like that, and people go, you've got £1 million record deal. That's not £1 million cash in their bank. That's
No.
a loan, and that's got to be
Yeah.
paid back
Yes.
before you make
It
the
is.
money. And
It's
that
a
involves
loan,
the graft.
and a lot of that money goes into promotion. So
Yeah.
whether it's, you know, putting you out to different territories, whether it's paying for your videos, everything, photo shoots, styling, hotels, everything, and all of that, like you say, is recoupable at the end, you know. So it's very easy to say, oh yeah, they got £1 million deal. It's like, it's not quite as, you know, simple as that. There are kind of complications to that. But yeah, you're right, the hard work does start there, and that's when you have that first taste of success, it's maintaining that and keeping it like that. That's the hard work, because you have to then, the pressure is slightly on then, because you have to go to the other territories, do the same thing in the other territories. And we did, you know, we did Europe, we did Australia, we did America to a large degree. And each time you go to a new territory, you're kind of starting again. So you go, so you might be on your second or third single in the UK, but actually in America, you're going back to doing your first single, and you're doing the shopping malls again, even though in the UK, you're doing your own arena tours, you know what I mean? So it's like, again, coming back to that whole thing about doing your groundwork, it's not instant. It's you do the slog, you do the work, you know. But yeah, so that in terms of clubbing, there wasn't really the opportunity. And I know that might be slightly different for other bands. I know other artists might have a different take on that and say, oh no, we did party and stuff like that. But I don't know, like we just couldn't burn the candle at both ends. Like, we just couldn't do it. But I did club a lot after the band ended. I don't know whether that was part of my healing process. But I was like, I was living in London at the time, and I used to, I definitely went out most weekends. It was a fun time. I think I just needed to get it out of my system, because I'd never done it before, you know.
And what was you dancing to? What was your tune?
A lot of the clubs we used to go to were quite hip hoppy. So I remember 50 Cent being played a lot, you know, in the club.
What a tune.
Oh shorty, it's your birthday, we're gonna party like it's your birthday. That was played. I feel like that song was on every time I entered the club. It was like a soundtrack. But that really sticks out. It's good times. I could not do that again. I honestly could I would rather stick pins in my eyes than go clubbing now.
I'm a club promoter. That's been my job all my life. And
oh God, sorry.
No. Honestly, Lindsay, like every Friday night. It's the greatest job in the world. When I was 21, at 49, honestly, mate, every Friday night it gets to like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm just thinking, I just want to be at home watching shit telly with my family. I do not want to be doing this. I'm interested to know about that. You touched on something a moment ago about pressure, when the pressure starts. You know, when you're, you know, you're traveling the way you do, and also, you know, you tell me about the pressure of knowing, and I say this with the greatest respect, you was a pop act, and you know, back then, and through history, if you look back at, you know, through boy bands, girl bands, whatever, they have a time span,
a shelf life.
And was that ever something that was on your mind, that we've got to keep on the treadmill, we've got to keep going, because if we come up, you know, we take a moment out, could the next thing come along, or could we be forgotten? Like, you know, is that a legit pressure when you're in the sort of moment?
I think, if I'm honest, I think I was probably too naive to think about it in that way. I don't think I had a sort of overall perspective of a career arc or anything or anything like that. I think I was just in it. I was in the moment. I was taking this opportunity by the horns, and I was riding that wave as long as it lasted.
That's the best way, right?
Yeah, I think and I think it possibly is the best way. Probably there was a sense of pressure from, you know, just like from maybe management and record company. Maybe they had a better idea of, you know, well, as long as this lasts, sort of thing, we need to really work hard and just get the most out of it. So there was probably a bit of pressure that trickled down in that sense, but you know, we worked all hours that God gave us, and I think we enjoyed it, and that's probably the key here, is actually we enjoyed the work. And
That's winning right there.
yeah, I know. And I think that's possibly why there was just that motivation and that drive just to keep going. And of course, as success then started to come, that was enjoyable too. And it was like, you know, a number one, and then another number one, and then 4 number ones in the row in a trot. And it was like, oh my gosh, we're literally riding this wave. Like, we're at the top here. We're riding this wave. Just keep going, keep going, keep going.
Make no mistake, that's incredible. 4 number ones on the bounce.
Yeah, on the trot. It is like, no, when you think about it, when you say it like that, it is an incredible achievement, especially because we were young women, you know, we were. It was a lot to take on at that point. Firstly, in terms of the fame, secondly, in terms of the workload, and thirdly, in terms of being away from family and friends for months at a time and not having that support, you know, that emotional support. Luckily, we had each other. And we looked after each other, you know, so that's something. I cannot imagine being an artist on your own and not having band members to just lean on. I can't imagine it.
Absolutely. We touched on confidence earlier, Lindsay. I want to ask you about your relationship with drive.
Yeah.
How driven are you?
I think I have an interesting relationship with drive. I think I dip in and out, if I'm honest. I think there are points in my life where I've been really driven and really focused and really disciplined about what I'm trying to do here. I like routine and I like structure. So when I have that, I seem to thrive and I seem to have achieve things. But there are points in my life where I haven't had that structure, and I feel like it's quite hard to kind of generate that drive and that motivation. And then throw in having a family and having kids and everything else. Like, I've got 2 young little ones at the moment, 5 and 3. So I'm in that stage of life where I'm trying to juggle. And that in itself is actually quite exhausting at times. And when you're really exhausted, it's also very difficult to find the motivation and the drive. But the one thing that kind of is always there is the passion for the music, and is the passion for creating something, and being creative and being in a creative environment with like-minded people. And I'm very lucky that I've always had that, whether it was with the girls and with the band, or at times where we weren't working as a band, you know, just other situations that I've been in, like, for example, my 2 years at the drama school, and other situations where I was in another band as well in between all that, like a country band called Clayton. And just, I've seemed to have gone from one situation into another where I'm surrounded by like-minded people. And when you have that, it almost generates energy and progress in itself. So you kind of get swept along a little bit as well. So yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it, drive? Because it changes. It's not always there, and it's not always as strong as it is at other times in your life, and it depends a lot on what you're going through. But yeah, I suppose underneath it all, I'm quite a driven person, in the sense that I do want to achieve things, and I have a sense of wanting to make my kids proud as well, and leave my mark on the world. Do you know what I mean?
They're going to grow up to know that Mum had 4 number ones on the bounce. That's some achievement.
At the moment, they could not care less. Every time I'm just like, I try and play the songs to them on YouTube or something, and they're like, yeah, that's nice, Mummy. Can I play with my trains now? Whatever. It's like, come on, guys.
It's impossible to be cool parents. Honestly, there's no such thing as cool parents.
There is no such thing.
I've tried my hardest to do stuff with my kids where I'm just like, check this out. And like, they're just like, yeah, whatever. Not interested. Not interested.
I know. It's
right,
funny.
Lindsay.
It's grounding.
I'm taking you home for track 6. Tell me your favourite song from an artist from your home county, please.
I'm going to pick No Frontiers by Mary Black.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So the Mary Black, Frances Black, the Black sisters in Ireland, they're all very, very well known. And I remember when I lived there at the time, this song came out, and it was just so beautiful. It was just a really, really beautiful, simple melody, simple concept, very acoustic, all about the emotion and the vocal. And it's just a really, really beautiful song. And I suppose a little bit of an introduction to me of Irish folk, that kind of folk feeling. So it kind of inspired me a little bit and opened my eyes to that sort of sound of music as well. So yeah, it is a really beautiful song.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to bring it right up to speed now, and I'm going to give you a chance to be what the kids call an influencer.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me a song that you think many people may not know that you would like them to go and listen
to. So many people of the new generation may not know this. Our generation probably will remember it, but it's To Be With You by Mr. Big.
Yeah, you're getting your rock back on now, aren't you?
Well, this is it. Yeah, I had to get it back in there. And it's a weird one because it's one that I have on my playlist. I've always had it on my playlist. I still have it on my playlist, even my gym playlist.
Yeah.
And I just love the song. And I just think it's so underrated, and it's got such a cool beat to it. It's such an amazing vocal, and the backing vocals are super.
Yeah.
And just the whole feel of it, and I love the sentiment of it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, all around, I just love the song.
Wonderful choice. Wonderful choice. Well, look, we make it really easy for people that haven't heard that to go and listen to it, and all the other tracks that we've spoken about today, Lindsay. We do a Spotify playlist to accompany the podcast, so people can go and listen to it all, and obviously go and listen to some Bewitched music as well. So let's talk about Bewitched music. So what's happened? How comes it's all happening again? New music.
Yes, new music. So you know what? Timing is everything, and I think we've kind of been gigging on and off over the years, ever since we did the big reunion back in 2013, I think it was. And we've kind of toyed with the idea of doing new music for ages, but just with one thing or another, whether it was having babies, COVID, all these things kind of kept happening. And I think during COVID, we actually did a podcast. The Bewitched girls and I did a podcast, and it was that podcast that our producer, who did our first 2 albums, he listened to it during lockdown, and he must have just like got inspired, and just he got in touch with us, and he was like, "Girls, I love you guys so much. You know, you still have it between you, the dynamic. You're so great together, and we need to do something. We need to do something." So ever since then, this has been kind of the seed was sown, and this has kind of been growing, and we've been talking about it for a while. And I think
what a beautiful thing to come out of lockdown.
I know. And it was really organic, because the reason we even did a podcast was because we missed each other and didn't have our chats anymore, and thought, well, how can we still be a band when we're not gigging? What can we offer the world when we're not actually gigging and doing our music? What else can we do, you know? But anyway, so we got back in the studio with him, and with it being the 25-year anniversary of C'est La Vie this year as well, can you believe?
That's insane.
I know. We just thought this is an opportunity for us to market, really, and just like, you know, if we're ever going to do it, let's do it now. And he played us this song. We were doing a bit of writing and stuff, but he played us this other song. We were just like, that song is it's banging. It's an absolute tune. Could this work for us? You know, and he was kind of saying, I don't know, maybe it's not quite you, this, that, and the other. But in the end, he came around and he was like, yeah, no, do you know what? Let's make it a Bewitched track. So that was that. And it was just, we really connected with it. It made us excited again. And we hadn't had that feeling for a long time. Yeah. So we recorded it, and that's going to be our single, which is released this week.
And that's birthday?
Birthday, it's called, And we've just shot a video for it as well. So it's all very exciting. And I suppose like the plan is to kind of just carry on making new music for now. And I think we'd all love to do our own tour again. I think that
Yeah,
would be the kind of end goal, really. If we could do that, that'd be amazing. Kind of amalgamate the old music and some of the new music as well, and give people a bit of nostalgia and also a bit of a, a surprise and some new music as well. So I think that's what we'd love to do either this year or next year, and to mark this anniversary and yeah,
wonderful,
celebrate it
wonderful.
really.
Well, Lindsay, I wish you all the best to
Thank
you and the
you.
other girls with the new music and gigs and such. And
Oh,
honestly, I've had a absolutely delightful time
yeah, me
chatting to
too.
you.
I've really enjoyed our chat. Thank you
I
so
really
much.
appreciate you giving up your time today, Lindsay.
Not at all. Thanks a
All right,
million.
absolute pleasure. I'm going to press stop. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.